How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Live Tier Talk. What's up, Trucker Steve? What's up, Alicia? Got a whole crew here. We got Love 616, Game Changer. Guys, we're going to have a great discussion today. We're going to be talking about what's going on in Rikers Island. I also got a few videos I'd like to show you guys. I'm going to have former president of the COBA Union, which is the Correctional Officer Brotherhood. Correctional Officer Brotherhood. No, it's not. What am I talking about? I'm so used to Facebook groups. I'm also, guys, a little side note here. We're still trying to get Elias in. He's having a little technical difficulty, but he will be getting in shortly. So I wanted to make sure we still start on time. So I don't know what the heck made me. It's Correctional Officer Benevolent Association, I believe. I was thinking of Correctional Officer Brotherhood, one of my favorite Facebook group pages. But let's get this. Let's get the formalities out of the way. So I do have my sponsor, guys. If you get a chance, please check out American Military University. American Military University is a great online school, very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of, what we do here on Tier Talk. If you guys are looking to get a degree, bring some experience back into the classroom, I would definitely be checking out American Military University. Guys, I'm a little sidetracked because I'm worried about Elias not being able to get in. He's working on it now, so I am a little sidetracked, so bear with me. Also, guys, if you get a chance, my book is on the market, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. It's a great book. It's used for training all across the country when it comes to corrections. And the link to that is available on Amazon. It's in my description. And we also have one more book, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. If you guys get a chance, that book's got tons of knowledge that's to share. So if you guys get a chance, please check that. Link to that is in the description. And guys, I have been releasing a newsletter. It's free. If you guys want, email me at gangianthony@yahoo.com, gangianthony@yahoo.com, and we'll be sending out those newsletters monthly. That's what we're going to do. Just quick little stories. I mean, this theme today was about connection, staying connected to the job. And I thought that was important because if you're not connected, I feel that you're not committed. And in this line of work, you have to be committed. If you're not committed, then you're not giving 110% effort, and inmates will see that. So, guys, while I'm still waiting for Elias to get on, let me just give him a call. So bear with me, guys. See where. Oh, we got him. Hold on. The timing is perfect. Now, guys, Elias Husamudeen, I believe, has around 3 decades or more in corrections. I believe also all of that was at Rikers. Let me just double check. Elias, man, what's going on? You scared me, man. You scared
Listen, I'm still trying to figure it out on my laptop, this Chrome.
I'm not even going to tell you to turn your thing sideways. Leave it the way it is. Don't touch it.
It's crazy. Let me see.
All right, there you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, man. You got me so freaking nervous, man. Hey, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes. My name is Elias Husamudeen. I am currently a retired correctional officer. I'm retired from the New York City Department of Corrections, where I served 34 years. I retired from the Correction Officers Union, known as COBA, the Correction Officers Benevolent Association in New York. I was the president of the union, the treasurer of the union, and the vice president for the union. And, I was a correction officer until I retired, because to serve in the union in New York City Corrections, you have to be a correction officer. That's one of the standing mandates. So at least you'll know what you're talking about and be able to really address things from a standpoint of knowledge, as opposed to, secondhand information or somebody telling you, or you just having been in the room that many times. So that's pretty much who I am. I retired in 2020. After I retired, I started a not-for-profit called the Eli Global Reform Foundation, dealing with criminal justice reform. And I also started my consulting company, where I actually, do consulting. So I think that pretty much summed it up.
Yeah, and I want to mention something here, guys. Elias is committed to both sides, because I see you get interviewed all the time, Elias, and a lot of people don't realize, outside of you being committed to just, making it better for the correctional staff, you also have family that was involved in the system that were incarcerated. Absolutely. Correct?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. My close relatives, brothers, other relatives, I have it on both sides. Baby sister's a correction officer. I have nieces and nephews who are correction officers, and I have family members who are on the other side. I mean, even during the time that I served in uniform, there were a couple of times in my career where I was the CO in the jail, and I had, a brother who was also, in the same facility. So I think that any any intelligent correction officer who don't think that his or her job involves being concerned about both sides is sadly mistaken, and
and,
don't really see the big picture.
yeah, and Elias, I love when you say that, because when people first attack us as correctional professionals, one of the things they say was, well, you don't care about the inmate population. Here, Elias comes back and says that's where you're wrong.
Right.
That's where you're wrong. Now, Elias, I got a couple of videos I want to show, but I want to start off here. You entered the system 34 years ago, correct? So
Yes.
what year was that?
I became a correction officer. Oh, what the hell did I do here?
Turned off the camera there, Elias. There you go.
Okay. I became a correction officer in 1988, working in
1988.
Rikers Island. I actually served under 5 mayors, Koch, Dinkins, uh, Giuliani, Bloomberg, and de Blasio.
Wow.
I served under 5 mayors and approximately 15 commissioners. I was in Rikers Island, during the times when when we had riots, when correction officers locked the bridge, when inmates take over the jail and different things. So, I've been, to use a phrase by somebody, I've been around.
Well, yeah, definitely. And what I want to ask, I want to give kind of a people an understanding of the journey of where we're at now with Rikers by looking backwards.
Okay.
So let's look at when you entered the system back in 1988 to where we are now. And I am going to discuss one very pivotal moment. We're going to talk about Khalif Browder moment. I have a video that we're going to play because I know that's a big part when it came to very generalized changes. I mean,
Right.
and we'll explain what we mean by generalized. But let's look at the system from 1988 and let's kind of bring us forward to today. When you entered corrections, when you started your work for the New York City Department of Corrections, what was it like? What made you want to get into corrections, and what was the world you were first exposed to?
Well, I came into corrections. I was a young guy. I took a whole lot of city tests. Took tests for corrections, for post office, for the police department, everything that was available. And I was called by the correction department and the police department roughly around the same time. And I chose to come into corrections. In 1988, when I became a correction officer, we had close to 18,000 inmates on Rikers and in the New York City borough jails. We had approximately maybe about 10,000 correction officers, not counting the supervisors and uniform.
Oh, we lost him. Hold on, guys.
That's pretty much the background. As a correction officer in uniform, I've worked punitive segregation, which some people call solitary confinement, depending on where you are. I was a punitive seg officer. I was an administrative seg officer dealing with segregation. I was a visit officer. I was what we call in New York City a wheel officer who rotate, and from one shift or one tour to the other, working wherever you're assigned in the jail.
Right. And guys, by the way, just in case you guys may not know a little bit what that wheel officer is, that's basically, as he said, basically you're assigned that day wherever the facility needs you, which is great because it's a great way for you to learn the actual full operations of a facility. Now, recently, obviously, Rikers has been on the spotlight a lot. A lot of people think it's more of a land grab. But I want to ask you a question because I know, unfortunately, Rikers seems to always be in the news for something negative. Now, I noticed Vice News, and we're going to play a video, guys, a great video from Vice News that served the other perspective, the dangers of what the officers face. Because when they always talk about criminal justice reform, it's always what we're doing wrong, what staff doing wrong. And it doesn't really mention the dangers that our staff behind the wall face and how we also are looking for good criminal justice changes. But having said that, we never feel that we're a part of that. That's the concern. It seems like the ones that are most effective, the ones that are on the tactical side, are easily overlooked when it comes to correctional changes because people that are far removed from the system believe that their input seems to have more value, which, again, totally disagree with that. But Elias, fighting from day one. Well, first of all, how long were you when did you become a union well, let's say a union executive member, and then when did you actually become the president of the union?
I became a union official in 1995, about 8 years, let's just say about 10 years after working in the jails. 1995, I ran for election and I was elected as the treasurer for the Correction Officers Union. And in 2012, 2012, I was elected the vice president, and in 2020, I became the president. So out of my 34 years, about 24, 25 of those years was spent working on behalf of correction officers.
Now, under 5 different mayors, I'm sure you fought many different battles.
Absolutely.
If I may, who was the one that you think, which mayor you think worked best with you guys, and which mayor worked the worst, and why?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you go back to Mayor Koch, Mayor Dinkins, those guys got caught totally off guard with the crack epidemic. And, the jail system went from, let's just say, having a population of 10,000 to having a population of 22,000. Under Mayor Dinkins, the city ended up purchasing 3 barges because Rikers Island was the jails were so overcrowded. Ended up opening up 2 additional female jails, which traditionally in New York City, we never have more than 1 female jail because in New York City, for whatever reason, the females don't go to jail as frequently or as often as males. So, we did that. We had a couple. Giuliani was pretty much a law and order type of mayor. The uniform could actually expect much support coming from him when it came to doing the job. I would have to say the worst out of the 5 was the most recent, and that was de Blasio. I know de Blasio, good dude and everything, but when it came to corrections and law enforcement, it just wasn't his. It wasn't his forte. He actually saw things a lot different than the other mayors that came before him.
Yeah, and guys, JM, a big part of our discussion we'll be discussing about Rikers closing, but also an idea that Elias Husamudeen had put into place that I've never heard mentioned before, and that's what's motivating this dialogue right now. Exactly an idea to maybe stop Rikers from closing. But I just want to give people more of a background when it comes to Rikers. Alicia B mentioned a good point. You're right. The crack epidemic, obviously, all prisons, jails, all of us, got that explosion, and then all of a sudden. Right now, obviously, the numbers are probably at the lowest, but they're starting to rise again. I've noticed too. I've noticed in some things they're starting to rise again. But she said managing that much growth had to be a nightmare. How was it for the front line because when you went in, right, you said your number was 18,000, then you switched over to 22,000, 4,000 in a matter of a few years. How was that growth, and how did that affect the people on the front line?
Well, look, in 1988, Tony, in 1990, we had a different kind of correction officer. and we also had a different kind of inmates. I think the inmate population, or the incarcerated individuals, if you know, if you're going to be politically correct, today in 2023 is not the same that you were dealing with in 1988, 1990. I mean, during those days, we had what we consider hustlers. A lot of hustlers was locked up in jail. You know, and although we had, you know, a large number of inmates, the violence, believe it or not, wasn't even as insane as it is now. But like I said, there was a different kind of inmate, a different kind of officer. We kind of understood each other. We kind of understood who they were, and they understood who we were, and nothing has really changed. I mean, to be honest with you, the numbers, the stats never change. There's always about 2 to 3% of the inmate population who are responsible for most of the violence, for most of the chaos, for most of what's going on in jail. Most recently, the Federal Monitor came out and said that it's pretty much like about 300 inmates responsible for damn near all the violence and that's going on inside the jail. And we had that group back then, and we still have them now, and 10 years you'll still have them then. You know, there's certain things that that's not going to change, in my opinion.
Hey, real quick, I want to get to Takeshi's production. I want to ask you a question. Do you feel that today, maybe the difference between the inmates of yesterday and the inmates of today, could it be one word: entitlement?
One word, and what?
Entitlement.
I could, you know, entitlement somewhat, but I think I just gave a lecture to a group of people, and I think that what happens is we kind of ignore the generational differences. We kind of ignore, you know, the attitude of the traditional, which is like our fathers and grandfathers, and you know, the baby boomers, which would be me, and you know, the Gen Y, Gen X, and millennials. We kind of ignore or not pay enough attention to the generational differences, and that happens with correction officers, and it also happens with the population that correction officers are responsible for.
Yep. Hope we get him back. Don't lose. No. There you go. You're back. Sorry, we lost you for a second. What was that last part you said? Your last sentence?
That we don't, you know, that you know, we probably need to pay a little bit more attention, you know, to the generational differences. You know, I think that right now in jail, you know, there's definitely look, where the generation I came from, we didn't tolerate a lot of crap. And the incarcerated population at that time understood that. They knew what that was. And, you know, for the most part, they carried themselves accordingly. And we carried ourselves accordingly. And I just think that, you know, I look, without being redundant, if we pay more attention to the generational differences and try to understand how to bring those different generations together, we'd probably have much more safer jails and less conflict.
Now, and by the way, I agree with you 100%. You know, obviously, guys, I know they're talking in the comment about having Rikers having a bad reputation. Let me just mention something real quick here, if I may. I Google a lot, and there's a lot of positive things that Rikers has pioneered, including vocational programs that involve the officers and help training the inmates. But you get very little publicity when it comes to that, because I believe Rikers is always the center of politics. And unfortunately, you know, when you're the center of politics, more news goes towards the left in support of closing down the criminal justice system, if you will, as opposed to actually, noting the successes. And I was wondering if you may be able to talk a little bit about its reputation and what the public may not be seeing.
I think that, look, I have this thing that I call the American DNA, right? When you talk about certain careers or professions, you have to ask yourself, what's in the American DNA when you're talking about it? Like when you're talking about teachers, what's in the American DNA? We admire teachers. We reverence teachers. We celebrate teachers. And when we talk about the DNA, what's in the DNA for police officers? Most Americans, you have those pockets of community that don't have a good relationship, but the average American, when it comes to police officer, they're looking at the guy that's going to help help the family when their sister's missing, when their father's missing, when grandma is wandering somewhere and she needs help crossing the street, or, we just, in American DNA, we have a fondness for police officers. Firefighters, what's in our DNA for firefighters? When we see that red truck, or some states a yellow truck, and we know that they're going to be the ones that's going to save us and pull us out the burning fire and bring the fire truck and get Fluffy out the tree. And if Granddaddy fell in the hole, they're coming in, and we have very, in our DNA, we have very positive things about that. But what's in the American DNA when it comes to correction officers or jail? Depending on your age, again, depending on your generation, James Cagney, Shawshank Redemption, Orange is the New Black, Oz, 60 Days In. And when you look at all of these shows are very negative when it comes to correction officers. And we need to understand what that is, why that is. And most of our leadership, union leadership, and most of our uniform leadership need to figure out a way that they can begin to change, what's in the DNA of America when it comes to correction officers, prison guards, the Green Mile. One of my favorite shows used to be Scandal with Kerry Washington.
Yeah.
And in that show, one of the stars got locked up, and guess what happened? A CO set him up to get beat down. So, you watch Law and Order, you watch Blue Bloods, you watch all of these cop shows, Chicago PD. Even though the lead character of Chicago PD is a crook, is a criminal with a shield, he is revered, and people just love him. And the same show with correction officers would not go the same way. So I think that we just have to understand who we are in relations to the family. Either we're the middle child, the older child, the younger child, and all three of us are going to be treated differently.
Now, people said, they were here in the comments here, that they believed that Rikers Island may have always had a negative reputation. I got a chance to meet a lot of the officers there. Once you meet your officers, once you see what they're about, it's crazy, because I know that these officers stand for something a lot more than what the media puts out there. And I found that to be very unfair. I remember in 2018, I was doing something, and I did a video prior about Rikers Island, and I got a chance to meet a lot of the officers who appreciate what I did, but I got a chance to really break bread with them. And when I found out what it takes to be a correctional officer at Rikers, a college degree in some cases, correct? Well, what's the criteria to be a correctional officer in Rikers?
Well, ever since 1999, correction officers are required to have a minimum of an associate's degree to come on the job. So right now, when I left in 2020, probably about 85% of the officers had degrees. Most had bachelor degrees. And the reality of Rikers Island has always had, a negative stigma. Like, I've gone all over the country and outside the country, visiting jails and prisons and things. And you say, the minute I say, well, I'm from Rikers Island,
Right.
I don't even care if they don't speak English. When I say Rikers Island, they know. Come on. You got songs, you know, they don't want to go to Rikers Island. There's songs about bad boy. Like, the reality is Rikers Island, you know, most Hollywood makes a lot of money off of that stigma that Rikers Island have. The reality is that 65% of correction officers when I left were females. And another 65% lived in the community where they work. Like you said, they don't get the credit for what they do. They teach inmates how to be chef. They teach them how to be a mechanic. We had one inmate before I left was accepted to 5 different colleges. You know, all of this stuff is is what's done. But here's the reality, Tony. Sometimes we can only blame ourselves. And I know when I was the president of the union and when I was, our administration and even the president prior to me, we always made it our business to try to educate the public. We always made it our business to try to let them know exactly who we are. And I think that once correction officers throughout the country, once their leadership and they come together and make up their mind that it's important that society understands who we are, what we bring to the table, and how important we are to the criminal justice system and to public safety, that will begin to change the impression of what people have of correction officers. I mean, sometimes even when I was the president of the union, I used to have to remind my members, like, listen, you're not judge and jury. Listen, it's none of your business what they're in jail for. Listen, I remember when they first started giving
Hopefully we get him back.
They first started giving tablets to the inmates on Rikers Island, and a lot of my members were upset. Look at what they're doing, and I explained to them, I'm like, look, when you got this uniform on, it's really none of your damn business. Your job is care, custody, and control. It's not your job in uniform to be in here deciding, oh, they should be punished or they should be this. That's not our job. Our job is to provide. In New York City, we call it the 3 C's: care, custody, and control. And other states, they have other names for it. But I think that, the minute we begin to realize exactly who we are and the position that we hold, and kind of like change our own mindset about how we go about this stuff, we can begin to change the perception of correction officers.
Yeah, there's really some good questions coming in, but I want to kind of still keep with the narrative real quick because I have an idea of what I want to do. And one of the questions that I love from Impossible Dreams, but don't answer it just yet, was what do you think about having a jail in each of the 5 boroughs if Riker does close down? I know we're going to talk about that. But before we get to that, I want to ask you another thing. I want to play a video real quick too. In corrections, we always deal with a lot of generalized changes based on something negative that happened at maybe one facility, which is rare and extreme, but they tend to use that to push some criminal justice agenda. Next thing you know, all facilities are going through these generalized changes. And then what happens are the people that are doing their job, they wind up getting disenfranchised because they get swept up into that negativity. And I know Rikers, and I just want to, maybe you can help me out with this, Elias. Rikers definitely hit national news with Khalif Browder. Now, guys, I'm going to show you a video shortly about Khalif Browder. It's about 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and it's going to tell you exactly what happened to this kid. And then it's a little controversial because a lot of people are putting blame on Rikers for what happened to him, because eventually the kid does take his own life because of basically they said that he was afraid. He got locked up again. He was afraid to go back. He was afraid to go back to Rikers. But before I show you the video, I want to ask Elias a question. Did the Khalif Browder incident put a spotlight on Rikers basically in like some negative light, or do you think it was taken to the extreme?
I think it was I think it was taken to the extreme. I think that, look, my opinion of that whole Khalif Browder situation is not that popular, but I do think it was taken to the extreme. For the 3 years that Khalif Browder was in New York City Correctional Officer's custody, he didn't kill himself. And I'm not going to say that he didn't try. I'm going to say that for the 3 years that he was in our custody, he didn't. It's interesting that once he went home, 2 years later, 2 years after being nowhere near Rikers, is when he committed suicide and took his life. He took his life when he was under the care of the Department of Health, Mental Hygiene, when he was under the care. But while he was in our custody, he didn't. The reality is that, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of misconception. And it's one of those touchy subjects that most people just don't want to deal with. We have a lot of Khalif Browders, meaning, incarcerated people who need help. Khalif Browder had more problems from other inmates than he had from correctional officers. There's just too many videos out showing correctional officers trying to protect him from the gangs, trying to protect him, from being harmed by others. I think that correctional officers became a scapegoat, and New York City Department of Corrections became a scapegoat, for something that we shouldn't have. I'm not saying that they are not bad correction officers, corrupt correction officers, no more than they're bad and corrupt teachers. Nobody like when you say that, no more than they're bad and corrupt legislators or, mothers and fathers. So the reality is, you would have hoped that once he was actually released, that he would have gotten the help that he needed. And, I can go really a lot into that, but I'm not going to, because, you don't, my mother always said, you don't speak ill of the dead, but I will say that, I think that, look, I'll say this and then I won't say anything else about Khalif. Here's reality. Here's my reality. So you have a kid who's 16 years old. He gets arrested for allegedly stealing a backpack, right? The cops come, they look, they find him, they lock him up, right? So that's his first contact with the criminal justice system. They take him to the precinct. Now, here's a 16-year-old. They didn't call his parents and say, come get your son. They didn't call his parents and say, we have your kid at the precinct. No, they arrested him. They put him in the precinct. And from the precinct, they took him to what we call in New York, central booking. So now he's had his first encounter with the criminal justice was the cop. Now he's been taken to central booking. At central booking, there's a district attorney. There are the arresting cops. There is a judge. There is a court-appointed attorney. All these people who are involved in the criminal justice system, he passed through all of them. So let's just say the cops are one level, the assistant district attorney is another, his lawyer is another. Now the judge is the fourth. The judge gives him a $3,500 bail. Now, they didn't say, most people don't know that he already had another, a prior. But still in all, a book bag, judge gave him $3,500 bail. Family couldn't, whatever, post a bail. So he's come in contact with 4 different levels of criminal justice. Now they turn him over to the correction office. 5th. The reality is, I'm saying all that to say that New York City Department of Corrections did not fail Khalif Browder. The criminal justice system failed Khalif Browder. Because in all honesty, he probably never should have even made it to the last stop on the criminal justice train, which is correction.
Man, amen.
So,
Elias, amen. Because I'm going to tell you something, guys, right now. If you guys are watching, there's a lot of magical work that happens behind the wall in the effort to rehabilitate someone and make sure that they don't repeat offenses and go out. But we never get acknowledged for that. And the failure doesn't come from our end. We work our asses off behind the wall. The failure comes because it doesn't transition into the community where they can keep it running. You know, I mean, let's just be honest.
Right.
I mean, you said something so freaking important that it's amazing. He didn't do this when he was in the system. It's when he went out. And I think sometimes, to be honest with you, when the community's put in the spotlight, you know, when it's their time to step up and they don't, they go back and say, well, you sent us out of failure. No, we sent you out of work in progress. You failed to step up and finish what we started.
Right.
I would like to show briefly, and the reason why I want to show this video, and bear with me, is because this is where changes started. And this is where you start seeing things go downhill. Because here's what happened, guys. When they push this politics, whatever it is, they make these generalized changes based on an extreme. And the sad thing is, guys, is that these changes do affect the operations of the facility. And in this case here with Rikers Island, this hit Rikers hard. Because you're going to see at the very end how Khalif Browder's incident, it's going to note the elimination of, and I'm going to put in quotes here because I disagree with this terminology, solitary confinement. We're going to have a whole show on what that really is, but that word doesn't exist. That's a word they use to scare people. Because at the end of the day, guys, the system in play, we don't have solitary confinement. It's more of a restorative housing. But let me, and we'll explain the difference on a later show. But I want to show you guys this video. So bear with me, guys.
We turn now to another tragic story about a young man who learned the hard way about the troubles plaguing America's criminal justice system. Khalif Browder was arrested at 16, never convicted of a crime, never had a trial, but spent more than 3 years in one of the most violent jails in the country. Tonight, here is Khalif in his own words.
You're supposed to be innocent to prove guilty, but the way the system is you're guilty till proven innocent.
Little did we know Khalif Browder was already dying inside the day we met him. At the easy age of 22, he'd already learned more about America's criminal justice system and endured more than any soul should ever have to. That's Khalif there on the floor inside Rikers Island, New York City's most notorious jail, beaten by a gang of fellow inmates, all caught on camera. At the age of 16, he was arrested and sent here for allegedly stealing a backpack.
It was like hell on earth. We were beaten, stomped by the correction officers, and they was just beating on me.
Beatings captured on surveillance video obtained by the New Yorker magazine, which first brought Khalif's story to light. In this video, we see him being escorted to the prison shower. He appears to speak to the guard, who in seconds is seen slamming him into a wall and then to the ground.
And I cried myself to sleep because it's like, I want to go home, and it's like they're not letting me go home.
To go home, Khalif's mother, Vanita Browder, needed to post bail of $3,000, money she said she just didn't have.
What was your reaction when you heard that your 16-year-old boy was being sent to Rikers Island?
My heart dropped. You know, I had heard so many horror stories about Rikers, and all I could picture was him getting hurt in there.
Court records show Khalif had attempted suicide at least 6 times, spent 1,110 days behind bars, more than 800 of those in solitary confinement. His court date postponed more than 30 times. He endured all this having never been given a trial, never convicted of a crime. Finally, in June of 2013, all charges against Khalif were dismissed. But his experience exposed a troubled criminal justice system and the brutality of life behind bars.
I think at some point, almost a reckless disregard by the prosecutors in this case. They didn't care, Byron. They saw his file. They saw that he was in jail. And he'd probably take a plea, and they were hoping he'd take a plea.
The judge told me that if I plead guilty, I would release from jail that same day. But I didn't do it. You're not gonna make me say I did something just so I could go home.
When we first met him, November of last year, he was doing better, he said. Earned his GED, started classes at Bronx Community College, pulling a 3.56 GPA. But the psychological trauma from jail had taken its toll.
And when he first came home, he would just walk the four corners of the driveway.
You hear animals do that have been confined to a space.
Yes, he did it. And I had to watch my baby go through all of that.
In the last year, Khalif grew depressed, deeply paranoid.
You know, deep down, I'm a mess. I feel like I'm a grown old man.
And then 2 Saturdays ago, 2 years after his release from jail, Khalif Browder hanged himself with an air conditioner cord in his home in the Bronx. He was 22.
I didn't know what to do. Can you imagine finding your son and he's hanging with his head back?
Khalif's death made national news, and messages of outrage mixed with sympathy flooded social media. John Legend wrote in an op-ed that New York failed Khalif. Lena Dunham Instagrammed his photo and called for reform. Our interview with Khalif went viral on Facebook. What we now know is that Khalif was due in court to face new charges of disorderly conduct the week he took his own life. His family said he was scared to go back into jail. By now, the beatings he endured in Rikers had been seen millions of times online.
What did Rikers do to your son?
It destroyed him. It destroyed him mentally.
Has anyone apologized to you from Rikers?
No,
From the prosecutor's office?
no.
What do you hope happens now?
I want them to be responsible, to admit that it was their fault that my son is dead. He spent 3 years in hell.
It sounds like you're in that hell now.
I will be in hell until the day I die because I found my son hanging. If your child is murdered, you have an immediate anger towards that person, and you want that person found, you know, and pay for what they did to your child. It's not one person, it's a whole system that destroyed my son. And I want them all to pay.
I deeply wish we hadn't lost him, but he did not die in vain.
New York did away with solitary confinement for 16 and 17-year-olds. Plans were announced to fix crowded dockets in courts to ensure the right to a speedy trial. There are also calls for change to the cash bail system. Currently, only 12% of defendants in New York City make bail.
We're in a quest for justice right now, Byron.
Paul Prestia, who helped Khalif file his civil suit against the city, says it's not enough.
Reform's all nice and well, but admit you did something wrong here, because that was always Khalif's message. How many young men have to go through this?
99% of the critics, they'll talk all that junk. I promise you, they wouldn't have the courage to do the job that the correction officers do.
Bernie Carrick knows the system from both sides. The former chief of the New York City Police Department, he also ran Rikers Island for years. And as a convicted felon, he spent time in solitary confinement.
As someone that spent 60 days inside solitary confinement, it creates paranoia. It makes you insane.
But he cautions the city against bowing to public pressure and implementing changes, he says, that could put Rikers correction officers and inmates in danger.
If you take solitary confinement away from the correction officials, you're going to see a major, major increase in violence. These are kids that come from gangs. These are kids that ran the streets. I think is very dangerous.
So what would you do? What were your suggestions to improve Rikers Island?
I think you keep that. You charge the staff that violate the law, and they're locked up.
It's not hard to imagine the life he might have led if he had made it.
I have the medal hanging on my bed.
You see it in the remnants of the life and the people he left behind, like Elizabeth Payams, a program director at Bronx Community College who worked closely with Khalif.
Associate's degree.
She says she's working on getting Khalif his associate degree posthumously.
It's for you.
Thank you so much.
What do you want the world to remember of your son?
To remember him for the stand-up person that he was. He was a good person.
The kind of person who turned down a plea bargain on principle, whose story may help save others like him.
If I would have just been played guilty, then my story would have never been heard. Nobody would have took the time to listen to me. I'd have been just another criminal.
Our thanks to producer Katie Yu.
Guys, let me just hold on. There you go. So we got Elias back. So Elias, the reason why I wanted to bring that in is because let me just unmute you. Because they start talking about solitary confinement. Now, I have an issue with that term. I don't believe that that term is used fairly. I know what we may have once been, but since then, solitary confinement, guys, should really be called restorative housing. And the reason why is because inmates, if they prove to be problematic or threat to the facility, or for other reasons, maybe an investigation, a reason that can be that we have to remove this inmate from GP for their own safety and the safety of others, that area is used. But it's always an effort to bring that inmate back into GP. It's not a punitive measure, it's a restorative measure. And the reason why the inmates are brought into that area is because the facility still has to operate. So if you keep the inmate, let's say the inmate poses a threat and you keep them in the population, the problem is there's no safety anymore. I mean, how do you have an environment that's conducive to rehabilitation when you allow the threats in those environments to run freely? And I think that's where we started getting concerns with Rikers, because at that point there, when they took solitary away, it automatically eliminated any safety for staff. I have a video I'm going to show in a couple more minutes with staff talking about the dangers that they now face, because the changes that are being made are not made in benefit of the people that got to do the job. They're made purely in benefit of the inmates that are trying to manipulate the system. So again, if you're going to make changes in corrections, you got to go through the people on the tactical side, because they know how best to implement that in a safe and controlled manner. This was literally taken away with no supplement, with nothing to mitigate. It was just like, nope, gone. And then the outcome of that, I'm sure Elias is going to be able to share. So I'm going to unmute you for a second, Elias. But when they started making the effort to eliminate, again, I hate the term solitary because I don't believe that's what it is. But when they started eliminating that, what threats started increasing at Rikers?
So just for a minute, like I said in the beginning, I was a punitive segregation officer for 2-3 years on Rikers Island at a time when things was really insane. The reality is that there are jails and prisons in this country where they have solitary confinement, and they have solitary confinement cells. New York City, Rikers Island, just happened not to be one of them. There are no solitary confinement. Every cell on Rikers Island, whether you are close custody, whether you are an administrative seg, whether you are general population, all the cells are the same. They all have a window, a view of either the Hudson River or the East River. But just to speak for a second to the Khalif Browder thing, I strongly believe that it's unfortunate, and that's not something that should happen, meaning him being on Rikers Island for 3 years. Anybody being on Rikers Island for 3 years. It's just that the system and the way it is needs to be fixed. And rather than talking about the system, they need somebody to blame. And unfortunately, they blame Rikers Island and correction officers. I'll say this to you. Somebody said that the definition of insanity, is to do the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. And somebody else said, what you don't resolve, you repeat. And the reality is that when it comes to punitive segregation, solitary confinement, I believe, like what I proposed to the city of New York when I was president of the union was, look, here's the reality. When give punitive seg 30 days. I don't care what it is. If they are violent, only if they're violent, give them 30 days in punitive seg, meaning separate them, segregate them, separate them from general population. If they come into compliance, we don't need to go through all these level A, level B, level C. Send them back to GP. But here's the thing, Tony, that we as correction professionals have to really understand. And like I said, some of my views are not very popular, but I don't really care. The reality is that if you put somebody in punitive segregation over and over and over and over, and this person's behavior doesn't change, then you're just as crazy as they are. Because obviously that person has a bigger problem. And it's not a problem that separation is going to solve. And one of the things that I said to, and I still say to the officials of New York and Rikers, New York City, Rikers Island runs the largest mental health facility in the East Coast. We're running the largest mental health. Right now, the last number is 24% of inmates in custody suffer from what they call SMI, serious mental illness. And more than 50% suffer from mental illness. My thing is, after continuously putting somebody in punitive seg, stop that. In New York City, force the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to do their damn job. That person needs to be in a Bellevue hospital-like situation. And they need to be diagnosed. We need to know, is there a chemical imbalance? Is there some type of psychological problem? What is the problem that this person is continuously being violent? And I think sometimes as correction professionals, we don't get it. Look, punitive seg ain't good for correction officers, and it ain't good. Why? In New York City, the only thing that happened is they get out of punitive seg, and guess what they do? They assault another one of us. Then we put them back in. And then when they come out, they assault another one of us. And then we put them back in. And like, a lot of my members were assaulted by people in punitive seg or coming out of punitive seg. Now, does punitive seg work? Yeah, it does. When I was a punitive seg officer, truthfully, and this is what I said to the previous mayor, 99% of the inmates that they put in punitive seg they gave to me, 99% of them never came back to punitive seg, although they never left jail. I would see them in the hall. I'd be like, hey guys, you coming? No, Haas, we good. We good. We good. But in hindsight, Tony, when you look at that 1% that we keep shuffling and reshuffling, come on, we ourselves, to protect ourselves, to go home the same way we came, have to sit back and say, wait, on this particular population or this particular inmate, we didn't put him in punitive seg 8 times, and he's still acting the same way. Wouldn't that say to the average normal person that there's something wrong here? So I think that part of the problem with us as correction professionals is that we have to sit down and look at things and say, okay, we know that if 2 inmates get into a violent thing or assault a CO, we're going to separate them, segregate. Okay. But a repeat offender,
Right.
then we're crazy. And like I said, sometimes my opinions are not popular, even with my own members. Sometimes they used to be like, yo, what are you saying? I'm saying that we're professionals And not only are we professionals, we're smart.
Right.
And we deal with this population. And we need to be able to say to the mayor, the governor, or somebody, listen, like in New York City, no reason why we don't have a mental health facility with that many mentally ill people. And most correction officers, we know who our mentally ill people are. We know who they are. And the reality is, why in New York City we don't have it? I've visited jails in San Francisco where they have a mental health facility. When you go into the jail, I forgot the name of the jail I went to, you would think that you were in a hospital. They had triage. They had a quiet room. They had like the way the infrastructure was. The officer was actually a part of the team to figure out how to deal with and what to do, and had the mental health people saying, "Hey, Officer Husamudeen, if this guy sees red, we got a problem. Or if he doesn't take his med, this is what's going to happen." And I just think that as correction professionals, we got to take it one step further. We have to. And it's to protect us. It's so that you can go home the same way you came. Because if you keep throwing somebody in, throwing them in, and it's not working, then that's the definition of insanity. And then correction professionals have to move away from insanity, as well as the people that we are supervising.
Can I add something? Because I totally agree with you. I want to add something though. So on a prison side, there are going to be some inmates that are motivated because they want that single cell. They don't want to be in DP, right?
Yes.
So how we do it is this. We call it restorative housing, and what we mean by that, guys, is that when someone is put into administrative segregation, or even disciplinary is constructive, guys, that's not a word to be scared of, because disciplinary is meant to be a constructive process. We start them with very limited privileges, because one is, if you don't do that, that unit becomes very inviting for many. So you want to cut back what they're allowed to get. So if general population can get $150 worth of commissary, you're only getting 15. You eliminate their want for that single cell. So a lot of people don't realize that a lot of inmates want to be there. But also for those that don't, we have staff also have to realize that there are going to be some inmates that could really see that as being punitive, right? And not all inmates handle discipline or punitive the same way. An inmate may be able to handle, a year, standing on his head. Some can't even handle 5 days. And I think that's where mental health comes in, and they mitigate it knowing that, hey, guys, we have to be very careful because what we're doing cannot apply to every inmate in the same way. So mental health helps us mitigate that to make sure that we stay in balance between what's rehabilitative, but what also shows some level of accountability. Because again, you can't just, I'm taking your stuff away. Well, I want it back. I'm decompensating. No, you're going to have to wait, because we just took your stuff away. And by the way, guys, just so you know, how staff maintain control is a loss versus gain system. It's not a reward system. You can't reward inmates for good behavior. You have to take away things for bad behavior. That is truly what works. Now, for the restorative housing process, I am a big fan of it. I want people to know that inmates are not forgotten during that process. We do our best to tend to the needs of each individual. But like as Elias said, you can't do everyone. That's why it's best when you have an inmate where at this point they're going back and forth. We can no longer spend the resources on that because we're losing out on our chance to get to someone else. And I also want to mention something else here too. The reason why I like the term restorative housing is because it does allow for an inmate to see a little level of hope. And for the officers out there that think like, what do you mean hope? What do you mean hope? You don't want to deal with a hopeless individual.
No, you don't.
Yeah, and to be honest with you guys, if you can't see that from our perspective, then you have no idea what true correctional officer policing is. Would you agree with that, Elias?
110%. See, the thing is that, look, man, Americans can't have it both ways. Like, you can't say things like lock them up, throw away the key, because this person is coming back to the neighborhood. They're coming back to the community. And you're going to have to figure out what you want. You either want him to come back or want her to come back better than when they left, or you want them to come back worse or the same. And worse or the same is not good for the community at all. It's just not good. And so you have to do that. But Tony, I gotta I swear I gotta go.
All right,
I
so
want to stay.
I can finish up. I have one more video. I'm going to show everybody the video from the Vice News that shows the dangers of what staff is going through, and I'll finish up. But I'd like to have you on next time and talk about your Rikers Island plan.
Listen, anytime. Because let me say this, right? Like tomorrow, which is what I'm preparing for now, I'm having an event called How We Could Win for Rikers Island and New York City jails. And here's the reality, and what I'm saying to people, like, I'm offering a solution that we share Rikers Island with LaGuardia Airport, or with the casino, or with Amazon. We share it.
Wait, I have your video on the news?
Yes,
I could show that video. Would you guys like to see the video of Elias presenting the idea of what could be done for Rikers Island? If you do, I want to play that video.
And see that the thing is, Sony, that we can share. We don't need that whole thing. And what I was saying is, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Criminal justice and jail reform is about investing. When you're investing in the people who are incarcerated, that's an investment that's good for the city. That's an investment that's good for the community. Because crime can wreak havoc on an economy of a city, of a state, of a town. And if you don't invest in trying to fix whatever's wreaking havoc on your economy and your social and political fiber, then why are we talking? And like, what are we doing? So we just have to do that. But I really because that's what I'm preparing for. I really got to go, but I'll come back tomorrow or whatever.
We'll do something later in the week.
Let me know Friday or whatever. All
I
right.
love everything you're doing, man. I'll talk to you again.
Right. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I'm gonna play your video.
Okay, you got it.
I love you, man.
All right, love you too, bro.
Bye. Hey guys, so I got a couple of things I want to show you. So before I play Elias's video, I want to kind of finish with the narrative. So you saw the Khalif Browder video. Now there's a video that Vice News did. I think it's a phenomenal video. I was very happy that Vice News wanted to show this perspective. And since changes were made to Rikers Island that Rikers Island believed was not beneficial for the well-being of staff, they organized this video. You're going to see staff. They're going to be a little undercover, but they're going to talk about some of the dangers that they were facing during these recent changes. And I really would like to show you this video first because I want to kind of finish that narrative, but to show you some of the dangers that the officers face, because we don't really ever see it from that perspective. So I want you guys to hear it from the people that had the courage to step up and really speak their concerns. Now, guys, these are things that they deal with every day. And I will say one thing about this. Thank you, Rikers, for putting it out there. Because what's great is they become a voice for us in corrections nationally the moment they did this. So I got to show you this video real quick. It's very important to me. Let me just show you this. Hold on. Let me mute myself. Let's see. I think it's this.
I was a correction officer at Rikers Island for 2 years. Rikers Island is an island with 9 jails that house inmates awaiting trial. There's been multiple occasions when I've been touring and an inmate will pull his penis out, will masturbate. They would set fires in their cell. You can be walking doing your tour and all of a sudden urine or feces is thrown at you. The inmates are in there for murder, rape, domestic violence, burglary, robbery. It's just an island filled with gangs that are constantly trying to kill each other. Almost all of them had weapons, knives, or sharp objects. Officers would be assaulted daily. It can range from a broken nose to a broken eye socket, broken bones, broken ribs. There's no limit to what these inmates would do to you. We are at a time where the inmates are running the prison. There is definitely officers accepting bribes. I was hired to provide custody, care, and control of the inmates. The system has definitely failed everyone involved. The inmates, the officers, everyone involved is suffering. 60 people quit in one day. Your captains would side with the inmate before they would side with you. They're worried about that publicity because they're trying to keep certain things under wraps. Drugs is very rampant. There's K2, fentanyl, marijuana, any drug basically you could think of, they probably have it. The value of any drug in jail is worth much more than it would be worth on the outside, maybe like 5 times more. There is definitely officers accepting bribes. Not only officers, but civilians bring it in as well. The people who are in charge of programs, doctors, nurses. During the pandemic, visits were suspended, so they weren't getting them through visits. Some of them are scared. Some of them do it for the money. On Rikers, the alcohol is called hooch. And what they would do is save their fruits and they would ferment the fruit. They would mix it with hot water and sugar and they would let it sit there. And then they would get drunk. They would become very touchy feely. Then they would become aggressive. And then they would start fighting each other, start arguing. It would just lead to disaster. I remember the first time that an inmate masturbated in front of me. I was feeding them through the feeding slot. Once you open their slot to put their tray, they would like put their penis in the slot. I screamed and the other officers on the floor was like, "What happened?" And I was like, "He's masturbating." And they were like, "Oh, he does that to everyone." Like it was just normal. I felt violated. I felt disrespected. I felt scared. I remember being scared to do my chores. There was a time in the building that I worked where an inmate got into the A station where a female officer was. He was able to rip her duty belt off, rip her pants off. Thankfully, an officer was able to come and help her. He was being held for rape. I believe his intentions were to rape her. They suggested that we wear Spanx underneath our uniform for just in case. It shouldn't be a just in case. Am I going to go to work today and is my belt going to be ripped off? Some of the inmates are used to the pepper spray, so it does nothing to them. And then there's others that threaten you. If you do use your spray, I'm going to cut you. You're in a position like, do I spray and get cut? Or what do I do? There's some of your captains are there just to tear you down. If you report something, or you get into an incident, they want to know, what did you do wrong? What did you not do to prevent it? You're more likely to end up in jail being a correction officer than you would as a civilian on the street. Suicide attempts on Rikers are pretty common. It breaks my heart. They are humans and they do have families that love them and are waiting for them to come home. It's just sad. Typically, there are about 50 inmates to one officer. The job was so draining that I would literally come from work and sleep until my next shift the next morning. Then the pandemic hit, and that's when I actually started getting stuck. That's 16 hours back to back. My coworker called me from the jail. She's like, I'm on 24 hours and they won't let me leave. And they're saying if I walk off the post, I'm going to get suspended. You're on post for 24 hours and then a fight breaks out and they expect you to do everything right on no sleep. You're supposed to still do your duties to the best of your ability. I have seen female officers terminated for having relationships with the inmates. There has been incidents where officers have been impregnated by inmates. Once you start a relationship with an inmate, or once you say yes to them once, you can't say no. because you're locked in, you're trapped at that point. I didn't have a coping method. I had chest pain. I've had colleagues died from heart attacks. I remember thinking I'm 21 and I'm going to have a heart attack. I hit rock bottom. I actually tried to quit like 3 times. You know, they would always convince me to stay in the fight. I remember getting to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Just give me the paper to sign and I'm done. I remember still feeling that chest pain for probably up to 5 months after I quit until it went away. Right after me, hundreds of people were quitting. If I can talk to an officer that was looking to join corrections, I would tell them, don't do it. It's not worth your quality of life. It's not worth your mental health. And until there is some sort of structure and safety, you shouldn't even consider it.
Now, by the way, guys, that breaks my heart because I'm all about being connected and loving this job. But, you know, to hear someone, you know, tell stories like that, and then obviously you would never expect them to recommend this profession. But I wanted to share that with you because I felt that was very balanced. It was honest. And I think that's something that has to be heard because, again, you know, the way the world works is they only hear the one side. So this female officer came up and she took a risk, but she said exactly how it is, you know, and I think these are the videos that should get out more because they're balanced. Because, again, you know, she didn't paint a perfect picture of staff either, but she painted the truth, you know. And again, you know, you can't, when someone is objective and they tell the truth, it's hard for people to challenge that because, again, they know where the kickback is going to be, so they put it out front. You know, I know you're going to say that when I talk good about correctional officers, you're going to say I don't care about the inmates. So let's start by saying I believe inmates can change their life. I believe inmates, but then there are some inmates that do this, this, and this. So it's a great way to balance it because it minimizes the haters. So I think it's great when we have people that come up and talk very objectively about the system in a fair way. And someone goes to this, well, Gangi, you're pro custody. It's like, no, I'm custody oriented. You know, pro custody should never mean anti-inmate because pro custody, it kind of defines what our position is in relationship to the inmate. So when people say like, you know, oh, you're pro custody, that doesn't mean I'm anti-inmate, but I changed that politically and I'm saying I'm custody oriented. And yes, I mean, that's the problem. Believe it or not, guys, before I show you the video with Elias, politics doesn't protect the people that work in corrections because the left is very pro-inmate to the point where they'll change the whole system without any regard to how it affects those on the tactical side, those that have to do the job every day. And we're going to definitely have a show in a couple of days, and we're going to talk about certain tools that have been weaponized, including PREA. We'll do that one day. I'll explain exactly what PREA is and how it could be used against us in operations. But our next show we're going to do that's going to be live is going to talk strictly about solitary confinement. I am going to have a panel, and we're going to tell you the truth behind solitary confinement. We're going to tell you what it really is, the measures, what takes place. And I think you guys are really going to get a good understanding of what that is. So in case you see something in the media, you could say, well, that's not really what it is. Or if you do see something, and let's say it's practiced wrong, you could say, yeah, that's accountability for that individual, not for the whole system of corrections, because that's our biggest concern. Our biggest concern as corrections is that an extreme happens, and then we get changes generalized, you know, changes based on that generalized extreme. And that's bullshit, because then you get people that are doing their job that get swept up, become disenfranchised. And it's like, yo, that shit that happened, let's say at this facility, that has nothing to do with us. And now we're going through changes that affect how I do my job. So who the hell cares for me? Who the hell cares for the person that's doing their job every day when, you know, instead of you holding this individual accountable for messing it up, now you're holding me accountable and I have done nothing wrong. So again, these generalized changes are these changes based on crazy extremes that have been generalized really does affect, one, our operations 100%, but it also affects, you know, our morale. And yeah, well, guys, to be honest with you guys, they're never, ever going to get rid of prisons and jails. You know, you can't. And I feel like the people on the left, the extreme left, that's always their end game. You know, it's not even in the middle. It's like the end game is we're going to eliminate. We may never get there, but we're going to strive for that every day. And the problem is the people in the facilities, the ones that are most affected by whatever they're trying to implement, we deal with those bad decisions. You know, not the people that, you know, oh, trial by error, trial by error. Try explaining that to the officers that just got assaulted, or to the staff member that just got raped. That I'm sorry, that was just trial by error. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, that shouldn't have gotten that far. That was a bit of a mistake. But we're going to go back and relook at it. No, you're going to go back and work the post now. And you're going to see how your changes directly affect how our people are doing their job. You know, it's so true. And then, oh, what's up, CKez? So thankful for you. You know, I love you, CKez, man. I love everybody here. You know, my niece is a psychologist and she's partnered with a police officer. She evaluates where they need to go to jail. See, that's a good, I like that partnership, by the way, because we can learn from each other. And I do want to do a whole show. Artist is right. I want to do a whole show on how PREA is weaponized. PREA basically is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Now, mind you guys, and we'll do a show on this. PREA has crossed it so much, including the housing of transgenders and a bunch of different things. But PREA was meant to help us discover roots so inmates can report any concerns of sexual harassment, rape, or voyeurism. And again, because we believe that at the time, the numbers didn't match the actual, what we believe would have been the actual numbers. Now, mind you, PREA is really beneficial to the inmate. So what I mean by that is if a staff member tells an inmate something that's sexual in nature, well, especially repetitive, because that's where the harassment be, or they have sex with the inmate or touch the inmate inappropriately, the inmate, PREA will protect that inmate. It's Prison Rape Elimination Act. Having said that, the inmate does the same to the officer. There is no protection for the officers, whatever the prosecutor decides to do. So sad thing is, you have this one female that an inmate was masturbating in front of. You know, she could put that over to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor might say, well, it's a prison, it's a jail. You know, we're not really going to push anything with that because you should expect that in that line of work. And something that would be in the community is a lot more forgiving in the prison. And that's sickening. So here I am. If I was in the community and someone masturbated in front of me, they go right to jail, ludac, whatever it is, do a little time. The officers, they go through that a lot, pretty much every day, but nothing may happen to that inmate because the prosecutor will be like, well, I have too big of a caseload. So, you know, you're a correctional officer, you expect to see that every day. And that's why you may have had the one officer say, well, you know what, they kind of do this all the day because maybe they're disenfranchised because they know the outcome of the effort is not worth it. Like, I'll write this inmate up, I'll go crazy, but at the end of the day, what's going to happen? And the sad thing is that we stop committing to the effort, and then it's like it no longer exists. It's like, yeah, but you still got to be annoying with it. Be persistent with it. Be persistent, man. New York, basically, mental health institution is closing state facilities at a rapid rate. So now, where do you place individuals that break the law? Well, that's to see. Omar's spot on. So right now, a lot of the prisons and jails have become that automatic resource. And the problem is, first off, we're trying to train staff, which is another hard thing. The officers that work in those special need units, they have to have a very good developed relationship with the mental health partners, and they have to be very high tolerant because these inmates can go from 0 to 10 in a heartbeat, but their mental health concern could be what's affecting those negative choices. So the officers that work those units are not always quick to, you know, run the unit by pen and paper. Like, what I mean by that is they're not writing charges because, again, you know, these inmates are mental health concerns, which makes it tougher for us because, again, you know, our officers are trained for safety and security. You're a threat to me. There is no middle here. You know, once you're a threat, you're a threat. Now the officers have to be taught to kind of mitigate that a little bit. You know, it's like, okay, I know he may have posed a threat, but having said that, did you know that this inmate suffers from schizophrenia or all this other stuff? So you need to have more investment in training the officers so they know what to expect. But I want to give my hats off to all the officers that work that unit, the work the special needs unit, the SNYs. Let me tell you something, or the SNYs, the special need inmates, SNIs, because it's not an easy job. It's a job that most people cannot do. And again, just the stuff that they have to deal with here in those units. So guys, I have somebody that works those units. They can tell you exactly how it works, how they work with mental health. And really, guys, they're all involved. Oh, thank you, CKez. I appreciate that. They're all involved with that inmate successfully rehabilitating. And it's crazy because we don't see that. We see the officers as the knuckle draggers and the aggressors. But in my world, I don't really see that way. I see the officers are there in the background, facilitating movement, making sure that the inmates get to these programs and become productive. And they do help out the program providers and the support services. So, I want to show you this video real quick from Elias Husamudeen. We didn't get a chance to discuss it because I really wanted to give a background of what Rikers Island was going through, because there is a bad reputation. I don't think it's a fair reputation. I think it's a biased reputation. And what I liked about Elias was he openly admitted, we're not perfect. I'm not coming here saying that all my officers are innocent, but I'm not also saying all of them are bad. And I think somehow there's no middle. There's no middle. Everybody takes their side of the extreme. And it's like, hey, guys, can we meet here? Because you're out here. But at the end of the day, we operate here. We really do. We operate here. We don't operate here. We operate here. But for some reason, no one ever wants to show here. Here is where the best interactions happen. Right here, right in the middle. But that doesn't get the media's attention. What gets the media's attention is whatever's on the outside, whatever's on the outliers. And I think it's great to have someone to kind of start their argument by saying, I know we're not a perfect system. I know these are the things that we could do better. But how come we're not recognizing this? And as I said, what that does is that nullifies anybody that wants to argue against it. Because in our system, guys, everybody sits here and they want to attack what we do. And I say, when we go out and we speak for our profession, embrace our flaws and make that our area to grow so people can't use it against you. If my child, God forbid, got picked on for something that people made, I would teach her to embrace that flaw, love that imperfection, so it never gets to you. And at the end of the day, people will get bored of just doing it because it doesn't get to you. It doesn't excite you how they want to do. So we know we're not a perfect system. Start with that first, and then tell people where we're going after that. Because the sad thing is, guys, when we go out and we speak, we get so caught up in defending ourselves that we never really get a chance to say what it is that we're really doing positive, what we're really doing moving forward. Because we're so stuck in what yesterday was. I say you bring up yesterday, acknowledge it. Yeah, we fucked up, but here's where we're at now. And then when the people start bringing up yesterday, the people in the audience are like, we heard him say that already. Stop. He talked about yesterday. Let's move forward to today. Prior to the closure of my facility, I worked a specialty and forensic diagnostic unit for years. So that was somebody we would like to get on. But first off, thank you, Omar, for your service. Because I'm telling you something, guys, it's not that easy. I know we did not get COVID pay. And Elias, yes, I am going to have him back. As soon as he does this interview, he has tomorrow, I'm definitely going to have him back on. I'm going to do the solitary confinement one. I'm going to bring Russ on. We're going to do a live. I like to bring more people onto this channel if you guys can get the word out, because I'm going to tell you guys something real quick. I know what we speak is the truth. I have experts coming from all over that give you a very high level of what corrections is about. But there's these other channels that they're like ran by like former inmates, and they give such an unfair, biased perspective, and they blow up because of that support. And YouTube doesn't support my channel. So all I do is I earn every subscriber. And it's funny because I did great on Duty Run. I love Duty Run. It's my people. Most of my followers are from here on Duty Run. So I love you guys. And I'll do great. And then all of a sudden I go on live today and I lose 15 subscribers because YouTube's like, wait a second, this guy was getting subscribers. Hold on, lose it. So I really need word of mouth. Like when I do these shows, I'm giving people advice. I mean, if you have someone in the system, we can help you. We could tell you, what's the best way to work with management? What's the best way to work with custody? Or even, maybe we could even tell you what your loved one is doing wrong that will help the facility operate. Because it's crazy how, families care so much that even if the facility could help, or, the family doesn't want to hear because they want whatever they can by the means that person, that loved one wants. I've seen people get used by their family. So the facility, maybe they're helping a certain way, but it's not good enough. And then as the facility tries to explain the context of why we need to go that way. Well, my loved one said it's like, yeah, your loved one's not telling you everything though. That's the problem. Your loved one's telling you just enough to get you aggravated. And then when you call up to us and we try to meet in the middle, you're yelling at me. And to be honest with you, I don't want to help you anymore either. Sometimes I get families that, I know my son messed up and, is there any way? Not a problem. I'm willing to help you now. I'm willing to help you now because we're starting off on the same page. as opposed to, yeah, you fucking officers there, you beat the shit out of blah, blah, blah. And now where it's a win-loss. I've seen it where I also tell custody guys, I like what Elias said before too. This is not a win-loss between us and the inmate population. If changes occur, don't take it personal. We're evolving. It's what we're growing into. So if changes occur, they occur. It's not personal. If the inmates get something, it's not a win-loss. Same thing with us. But when we start at this high level of animosity, and the smallest move forward in whatever direction, the smallest move becomes a win-loss. And I've always felt that. I always thought this, guys. If we help staff be more effective at doing their job, because you have to go through staff first. There's no other way around it, guys. If you don't go through correctional staff, there is no actual actionable solution. Because, again, staff have to be there. They have to carry it out. They have to be involved in the suggested changes. So if you don't go through them and you leave them out, there's failure there. But, again, what I want people to know that is if you give staff the respect and you get them invested in the change, watch how much they support what's being done. Watch how much they don't feel left out. Right now, staff doesn't feel involved. They feel left out. So any little inch that goes to the inmate, they're like, well, shit, we haven't gotten even a glass of water. We haven't gotten nothing. So how do you expect us to support that when we're left to dry all the time? But I guarantee if you do it the other way, guys, please, if you go through staff first and get staff invested and help them facilitate the change, there's no longer the win-loss. Because here's why people divide, guys. They battle for resources. That's where divides happen. Divides happen when people feel that they're battling for the same resources. And here's what's happening here. Correctional officers and inmates may feel that they're battling for the same resources. And they feel they're battling it for different reasons. But if we could find a way to kind of filter that through the staff, and we no longer feel like it's a battle, the world will change in corrections. All you got to do is get the right people up to start the right momentum. And Elias is one of them. Guys, the change will be beneficial because the people will be invested in it. And they're going to want it to succeed. They're going to want that to succeed. You know, you just got to tell them, you just got to say this. Hey, guys, what do you think we could do better? And when I say this, guys, I want to mention something, though. When you're given the opportunity to speak into the changes of what needs to happen, don't be selfish. Be pro-social. You know, so what can we do that's better for the agency? Not just better for custody, not just better for programming, not just better for medical. What could we do that's better for everyone so we feel connected? You know, so we feel that we are part of something bigger. I know management, what management can do. I know one thing management can do something right now. Management, to some extent, can provide more transparency. Let people understand the context of the changes, why it's happening. Because when we're stuck in ambiguity, we don't trust anybody. If you're not telling me why these changes are happening, then what am I connecting myself to? If you just tell me to do something, there's no value behind that. Tell me why. Tell me why it has to be done so I can buy into something, so I can invest in something. You know, people want, it's like, hey, guys, we got to create a vision that we all can enjoy. We all can step up and be a part of. Are you going to champion that vision? Guys, champion a vision is not the best way to garner support because at the end of the day, it's someone else's vision. You want people to be invested in that vision. That's the best way to get the support you need because then they feel that they're a part of it. You know, so I'll tell you something right now on the side of visions, on one extreme, you may have people that don't believe in the vision, that outright attack it. Now, if you sit them next to someone who's invested in that vision, who's got that founder's mentality, there will be a war between those two. And that's what I want. If we're going to grow and change into something great, I need to get the people invested so they fight for the change as if it's their own. And then watch how different the system will be. Because at the end of the day, we are to meet the needs of those inmates as a whole. So to get staff involved and connect with that passion and fight for it, that's what's going to make the system better. 100%. Involve staff to the point that not only do they have to follow a vision, not only are they aligned with the vision, they've invested in the vision. But until we do that, nothing matters because you can't force people to change. And I'm going to tell you something. When you get people to invest in a vision, it's no longer change. It's evolution. It's evolution. Because basically that's taking the best and starting from there and evolving. Change is more when someone says you got to change, the first thing I say is, what am I doing wrong? And now I'm already resistant because I feel like the change is happening off the back end of me doing something wrong. So how could I be supportive of that? But if you say, hey, let's grow together. What can you add to this so we can evolve? And what does evolve mean? It means that, guys, everything we've done in the past matters because this is where we're at now, the evolution of corrections. So I just feel that matters, more than you'll ever know, because at the end of the day, I think it's our right to be fulfilled from the work we do. As Simon Sinek would say, fulfillment is our right, but it's also our choice. And he doesn't mention that in his videos. I mention that because as much as everybody blames leaders, and trust me, guys, I got tons of books about being a better leader. I only got one book from Liz Wiseman about being an impact player. So I got tons of books about being a leader and what you could do to make the environment better, but only one book about being an impact player to work with leadership. Because at the end of the day, I could motivate all I want as a leader, but if you don't want to step up, there's nothing I can do. So you on the front line, you have to make the choice to make your career count. And for people that say, well, I don't feel connected, become connected. Because if I was walking next to you on a tour of a unit and you started telling me that you're not connected to this job, the first thing I start to question in my head is, how committed are you? Just curious about your commitment then. Because I need you to be connected for my own survival. And connection, it matters to me more than you'll know, because at the end of the day, when you're connected to this profession, you commit to the work that's expected, man, what a smile comes on your face when the work is done and you've impacted someone else's life, because that's all we do in corrections every day. We just impact people's lives. Part of the problem with the department is that we have way too many individual politician advocacy groups making laws, rules, policy, procedures. Yes. And that's always going to be a problem, guys. You know what the funny thing about that all is? It becomes paper driven. Think about a paper-driven organization. People that are removed from everything write memos, and because it's more of a liability thing. Holy shit, we made a mistake. Let's create a memo. Holy shit, we made another mistake. Let's create a memo because we don't want to get sued, and we gotta show that we did something. Yeah, but the problem is with running corrections by memo is you lose innovation. You lose staff that's willing to step up and make a decision because they get so policy driven that they totally rely on policy, and they don't realize that not everything fits policy. So they're waiting for the next memo to come out. And at the end of the day, the people that are creating the memo, to be honest with you, it would be great to see memos coming from the bottom up, where they're most affected, because it takes a lot of power or a lot of intentionality and courage to speak truth to power. But the only thing that happens when you have people leading from a distance is that it becomes a paper-driven operations, because their communication is either going to be through email or paper. And at the end of the day, that doesn't solve anything, because you lose out on what corrections is all about. People stepping up, making decisions, calculated risks, because there's always going to be calculated risk in corrections. I'd rather have someone be strategic and take a calculated risk and fail than to not make any decision at all. So, and again, sometimes it may be a tough failure, because it's corrections, the consequences of what we do. If we make a wrong decision, I get it. But man, I'll take a wrong calculated decision over inaction any day, because it's all about the intent, and we have to have a culture that cultivates that level of trust. I want people to take strategic risk, because that's how you innovate. That's as long as there's a reason for it and you can justify it, and again, people are like, oh, you mean you want people to take risks and corrections? Guys, we have to learn every day. And how does any system evolve? It evolves when people make decisions that are rather innovative. And if you have supervisors that micromanage or lead by fear, then you lose out on innovation and growth. You can't lead by fear and expect your people to be innovative. You can't. You have to allow them some level of freedom. The thing is, you delegate the what, but you push down the how. This is what I want done, but you guys figure out how to do it. And that's the key. That's the key to any success. And I agree, proper task driven instead of people driven. You want to hear something funny? I delegate authority. I don't delegate task. I get exactly what you're saying, by the way. So it's not a knock on that, because that's well said, by the way, artist. Well said. I just want to mention, like, my management style is I delegate authority. I delegate the authority to do a job, and then you go ahead and do it to the best of your abilities. And if you need anything, my job is to provide you the resources. That's my job. My job is to provide you the resources. I want my people to be empowered. That's the key, especially in corrections. If your people aren't empowered, they're not going to make decisions. They're going to constantly look at you. Well, what do you want to do? I say, hey, guys, I love a facility where you tell them A, and they'll walk it right through the whole alphabet and get to Z. And then there's some facilities that you got to tell them A, B, C, D. And then it's like, well, is it the person? No, guys, it's a culture problem. Because right before I got here, you could have had someone that was micromanaging. And these people don't know how to take anything from A to Z because they're so used to checking in at every checkpoint. They're so used to that. And it's like, well, guys, there's no momentum here. You cannot create momentum if you're stopping at every checkpoint, and if you don't create momentum, you ain't moving forward. I want to show you guys this one video from Elias posing his idea about what he wants to do to Rikers, and then we'll explore it. Right when I have him on again, we're going to go right into that topic. I just wanted to give people a backdrop of what Rikers Island was about and the reputation, which I tried my best to get it out there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But I want to show you this. This was a great interview, and I really want to share this. This is Elias Husamudeen, who's been out of the system now. He worked for 34 years, and he's still fighting for what he feels is best for the people that work in Rikers Island. So check this out, guys. Hey, yeah, I like that. They're happy to see me live. It kind of makes my day. Okay, hold on one second. Let me show you this video about Rikers Island. I think it's a smooth idea because, mind you, there's a land grab now for Rikers Island because it's worth a lot of money. So watch what he comes up. He has this proposal that basically, because right now it's either we get rid of Rikers, we close it down, or we keep it operational. And there's an extreme because a lot of people don't want to operate. They want to close down. And he did this. He took the two extremes, like I mentioned, and he operated in the middle. And watch, this is cool. You make decisions on a day-to-day basis. Your job is based on decision making every day, and your knowledge of certain situations that you've done before will help others. That Stacy, hold on, guys, because Stacy's so spot on. I got to give credit for that. Well said, Stacy. And I want to add something that, if I may, Stacy, it's all about evaluated experience. All because you've experienced something, doesn't mean that you have the knowledge to make that, applied wisdom. You have to evaluate your experience. I used to go home and my inmate manipulation book, that's all literally sitting in my head. I had this experience, but I did not take that experience passively. I went home and I just intentionally just played it out different ways. The what if, and literally not, guys, can I tell you something? Within 1 year of experience, I had 10 years of evaluated experience because just the amount of times I played things ahead. And guys, not in a way where I was obsessive with it, always in a way where I grew and I was better. So I don't want people to think, oh, you're upset. No, I find fun in that. I find fun running what if scenarios to see if I could have done something a bit better. But I'm a big key on evaluated experiences. Delegation is being people driven. So true. Your succession planning, when you allow your people to learn and grow through delegation and support. I love that. Who could say that better? I just want to read that again. Delegation is being people driven. Your succession planning, when you allow your people to learn and grow through delegation and support. Can I tell you something, artists, and why that hits home with me? Is our job as leaders should always be to train the next person to be a leader. This isn't a competition. I want you to be better than me. And a good judgment of who a leader is based on the people that work for them. Believe it or not, the power that they have. A good leader knows how to delegate authority to make future leaders. And then when you're gone, they're ready to step up. I have people sometimes that are so insecure in their leadership position because they, instead of them wanting to help somebody become the next person, become the best that they can be, they stop them because they're afraid that person's going to be competition for them. It's like, are you kidding me? Then you're not a leader. If you're going to stop that person from being the best they can be, here's the other thing about that. And it's just so true, artists. Those are the people that want recognition. That's all they want. They want the perk, but they don't want the responsibility of growing your people. And that's the bullshit. You know, it's like you'd rather be recognized for being number. That's why I don't like to throw out number one, because sometimes people get so embraced in that title of being number one that they don't want to share information, that they don't want to help another person grow because they don't want to lose that number one. Guys, it's okay to strive to be better. I'll never say strive to be the best, but you could always strive to be better, but never in an effort to be number one. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get blinded by that end result. And anybody that comes your way, honestly looking for help, you're going to see them as competition. You know, this isn't about me finding the cell phone today. It's about this facility getting hold of that cell phone. I don't give a shit who finds it. Just find it. No, we're not screaming at a mountaintop. Gangi found a cell phone. Yay! No, we found a cell phone. We found the drugs. The people that are out there doing searches and saying I and checking out things and all this other stuff, like it's a me. It's great. You clean up the facility, but you're not doing it for the right reasons. You're not doing it for the right reasons. This has always been a team effort. If you ever get a chance, I said teach another, but I would do an effort to teach them and make them better than you. I mean, that's the key. Because then, like Artist said, your time to leave will come one day. And you want this person to go past you so we keep moving forward. You know, it's funny. I've seen people that held Olympic records and they love it when someone breaks their record in the past, because for them, what they say is that means the sport's getting better. That's all it means. I had my time. Now it's their time. Let me just get that thing down here. Hold on one second, guys.
It's a new year, but the debate over the future of Rikers Island continues to heat up, as well as the debate over criminal justice reforms. As city officials and activists discuss what will become of the jail complex, we're joined by Elias Husamudeen. He's the former president of the city's correction officer union, and he's here to actually talk about his ambitious plan for Rikers and the state of criminal justice in 2023. So when we talk about a plan, you actually have a plan yourself.
Yes.
For Rikers Island and what should happen there. Some people are talking about tearing Rikers down. That's what the city council and the city had said, and build smaller jails.
Right.
But as the former correction officer president, you say no. What's your plan?
Well, you know, there are dozens of proposals as to what to do. Like you said, shut it down, give it to LaGuardia, do this. This New York Times just put out a piece talking about making a casino there. And one of the things that I am proposing is that we actually take and share Rikers Island with a potential tenant, if you want to call them that, which is LaGuardia, maybe the casino people, or maybe even Amazon, because we're talking about almost 13 million square feet of prime real estate. So I believe that it's time for New York City to start looking at criminal justice reform as an investment. If you're really looking to reduce recidivism, rehabilitate people, and end generational incarceration, you're going to have to invest in it. And it's time for people to begin to sit at the table. And let's talk about that. We can take 100 acres of what's now known as Rikers Island, and we can build a campus style facility that where we have not only the jails, but we have a vocational center, we have a mental health facility, we have a hospital, we have you name it, whatever it takes to change the behavior or to help reduce recidivism, that can be done. And it can come at a savings to the city as well.
And I know we have some photos from your proposal that I want us to look at while you continue to talk. But your plan, you're actually talking about rebuilding Rikers, keeping it there, and also having, according to your plan, LaGuardia take at least half of the island to expand LaGuardia Airport. And there's another photo there that shows it, but you have another photo that has the buildings. That one there, that's the new complex on the left.
Yes, that would be the new Rikers Island, and on the right will be LaGuardia, or like I said, Amazon, or like I said, the casino investors. But the reality is we can do that, and the monies that's generated from Amazon, from LaGuardia, can actually go to invest in criminal justice reform, can can invest in reducing recidivism in a real way, where we look at we look at what the return of our investment is. And the problem, look, if they can build entire cities in the desert, then we should be able to take this 420 acres and make it something that's beneficial to the city of New York.
Now, you were a member of the correction department for 30 years,
34.
A worker, a union president, right?
Yes.
34 years.
Yes.
Some people are going to say, well, you stepped away. You're no longer working there. Why is Elias Husamudeen involved in a plan for Rikers?
Well, here's the reality. I did that for 34 years, and it's something that I continued to do even after I retired. I established a nonprofit reform organization called the Eli Global Reform Foundation to deal with reform. Look, I come from Harlem. I come from the neighborhood. I have family members, very close family members, who are on the other side of the bar and on this side of the bar. The reality is it's a passion of mine, Dean, and it's not going to go away. And this proposal that we have, no one has proposed this. Everybody's proposed, shut it down, tear it down, but nobody's really said, how do we really reduce recidivism? How do we really stop people from coming back and forth to jail? And if you look at that diagram that I have there, we can do that.
So you're talking about scrap the plan of building smaller facilities in the boroughs. No, you're not saying scrap that plan?
You should continue to have those facilities. Now, they shouldn't be 20 to 30 story high rise. No, because it makes no sense not to have a jail in Manhattan where the courts are. It makes no sense not to have a jail in Queens where the courts are. It makes no sense not to have,
so
you understand what I'm saying?
Much smaller.
You don't need to go 860, 30 floors. You don't need to do that.
But your plan that you're trying to get support for, and then you've told me you've met with some elected officials.
Yes.
Rebuilding, putting new buildings on Rikers.
Yes.
Does that include a courthouse on Rikers? Because that's been a part of the problem.
Those
getting
buildings,
people to the courts in all of the boroughs.
What we're proposing that on that island with those 15 buildings, we have a courthouse. We're proposing that we have a transportation. We're proposing that we have a transitional re-entry, so that 30, 60 days before it's time for these guys to go home, that we begin to help them immediately by putting them in transitional and helping them get a job and helping them do interviews. Those only 4 of the 15 buildings are jails. All the other buildings are about helping reduce recidivism and rehabilitation.
Final question for you, because I know you're going to get a lot of questions about this coming week. You're having a forum.
Yes.
Very briefly, tell us about the forum, who will be there, and what's the goal?
On Thursday at 1 o'clock, I'm having a forum to actually present this proposal to the city. The press will be there, and it's going to be at 521 West 23rd Street, and it's from 1 to 5. And at that proposal, we're going to lay it out completely where there will be no questions.
All right. A lot of people are hearing about it first here, because that's invitation only, and people really cannot show up, but they'll hear more about it.
Yes. And they can go on LinkedIn and they can go on Facebook, because it's there. The link to sign up is there.
And the name of the forum. So Jeff, the
name of the forum is How We Can Win Rikers Island and New York City Jails.
Elias Husamudeen, thank you for joining.
And guys, just so you know, he's talking about tomorrow. That's why he had to go. So that thing is for tomorrow. So if you guys want to check it out. But I think it's a great plan. It's not something that people were mentioning. So I want to show you one more video that also came from Vice News real quick. It deals with the conditions of Rikers during and after the pandemic. So basically how understaffed they became, the hours they had to work. And if I remember correctly, it's shot in the same format that we just saw. Comment on video, the transitional piece needs to be at least 90 days out. Yep. And I'll tell you something. I'm going to get that book, Concrete Mom. If it's recommended, Alicia knows I'm going to pick it up and read it. Always a pleasure traveling. Good to see you here. Guys, don't forget, if you get a chance, please share this on your social media platforms as well, just to get more people some good insight. And I thought we were very objective. I want to show you guys one more video. You guys did want to see it. Let me just see. To change the behavior of a facility is to be that person who motivates, teaches, trains, and shares the knowledge that you were taught. And I love that. Stacy, well said. And I think, what did Gandhi say? Be the change you want to see in the world. You know, be the change you want to see in the world. It's pretty powerful. Okay, let me show you one more video, guys. Hold on.
You might be asking yourself, can you actually create high-quality live streams?
This is a free call from an incarcerated individual at New York City Department of Correction.
It's not safe at all. It was never safe. I mean, if you ask me, but you got officers that's paid to de-escalate problems, and there's no such thing as de-escalating no more. This is full throttle.
Francisco Jimenez has been on Rikers Island for over 3 years. He still hasn't been tried for a crime he says he didn't do. How have the conditions changed since the pandemic started, or how have they gotten worse?
The violence, I guess the short staff has led to like chaos. Like for instance, we don't get no programs, things that used to happen. The order is gone. You got one officer doing like 5 different things. The medical assistants, like right now, I just told you they burning mattresses next door. Somebody just got cut. He's been holding his face for like the last 2.5 hours. They're not responding to things as fast. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's just chaos all over everywhere.
Rikers is New York City's main detention center, where people are sent before trial. If they can't make bail, they're stuck. It's never had a good reputation, but in 2021, the bad got worse.
The conditions at Rikers Island are now being described as a humanitarian crisis.
They say it's not safe for corrections officers or inmates.
It wasn't access to showers. They were not wearing clean clothes.
Another inmate death on Rikers Island.
There were 16 deaths in the city's Department of Corrections custody last year, the highest number in 8 years. 15 of those were at Rikers. Families of the incarcerated and criminal justice advocates come together in front of City Hall nearly every month, demanding that the mayor either close the jail or improve the conditions inside.
My son did not go in there to die. They basically killed my child. If they don't have the human rights or the needs to take care of those men in there, just let them go before they gotta come home. Hey, it's not right. It's not right. It's not right.
A court-appointed federal monitor has been investigating Riker since 2015. Its latest report calls 2021 the most dangerous year on record. Since 2016, rates of use of force by correctional officers have tripled, while the rate of fighting has doubled. And in the last year alone, the rates of stabbings and slashings more than doubled. What were the conditions like? How would you describe your time at Rikers?
It was hell.
I want to mention something real quick. If you notice that time frame real quick, that's this around the same time frame they started to get rid of what they would call solitary confinement. So having said that, when they didn't have a place to segregate the inmates that were more problematic and more of a threat, violence went up. Violence against staff, unfortunately, in some cases against the inmate, and then inmates on inmates. But mind you, guys, and again, I'm not condoning it, but I want to give you a perspective here. So bear with me on the perspective. This doesn't mean I condone it. But if we don't have rules to minimize any threat, staff will be forced to take measures in their own hands. And it's not the right thing to do. But unfortunately, what else can they do? So again, I'm not supporting it, because trust me, I'm not. I'm giving you a perspective, and it's not an excuse, because if I was a supervisor over there, I would still hold them responsible. But mind you, when the laws change and staff are not involved and the changes are actually posing a risk, staff is going to go into survival mode. And what do they do at that point when they're in survival mode? When they feel that, remember, anybody that works in corrections, we believe that the system is supposed to have our back. And how do they have our back? By creating laws that help us do our job more effectively. When those laws don't work in our benefit, and those laws take away resources as opposed to giving us resources, our staff gets pushed into survival mode. And then, when you're in survival mode, there's no rules anymore. It's either me or you. So I just want to give a perspective. I'm not saying it's right, but I wanted to be fair and give a perspective. And look at the timeline. The timeline pretty much was after they started making those changes. So let me just go back to that video. I apologize. I didn't mean to cut through. I just thought was relevant. All right, hold on.
In the city's the most dangerous year on record. Since 2016, rates of use of force by correctional officers have tripled, while the rate of fighting has doubled. And in the last year alone, the rates of stabbings and slashings more than doubled. What were the conditions like? How would you describe your time at Rikers?
It was hell. I hope I don't have to experience nothing like that again.
Christopher Clark spent a year at Rikers and was released in September. He's preparing to sue the city, alleging he was a victim of CO misconduct. So tell me about the case and what happened on that day.
The lawsuit was me being attacked by inmates in jail while I was incarcerated.
And you believe that the correctional officers had something to do with that?
Of course. It happened blatantly in front of my face. They popped the gate for the inmates to jump in. The COs control the jail. Ain't nothing happening unless they call the shots.
How legally are these correctional officers responsible for the violence that happens between inmates?
Well, they're responsible if they know the violence is taking place, if they actively participate in it, or they turn a blind eye to what's going on.
These aren't like new stories that we're hearing about Rikers, right? This kind of system has been going on for decades. Oh. Can you talk about how it has gotten worse since the pandemic started?
Yeah, what you're seeing, you're seeing extensive staffing shortages. You're seeing correctional officers calling out of work on, on a basis that's unprecedented. And you're seeing that the situation there has deteriorated greatly. The correction officers have pretty much, for what it seems like, have lost control of the facilities and have just kind of deferred to the gangs to kind of run them.
Here's one thing you need to do before you start your holiday shopping. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this.
Last year, an average of 1,500 of the city COs called out sick every day.
The sick leave abuse has been going on for many, many years. So this is not a new thing. The problem is that it was so exacerbated by the pandemic.
Serena Townsend had been head of investigations for the Department of Corrections since 2018. She was looking into CO misconduct at Rikers, including abuse of the sick leave policy. When the new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, took office last month, he appeared to agree with the CO union's claim that they were being over-disciplined by Townsend. He fired her on his third day in office. Were you surprised when you found out that you had been let go?
The truth is I was, despite the fact that I knew that my interests with the commissioner and the unions were not aligned.
Can you describe some more cases or give some more examples of officer misconduct?
So even before the pandemic, we would see hyper-confrontational behavior. We still saw cases, many cases, where the officer was the aggressor, and that's problematic. There were issues with false reporting. Officers who maybe didn't use that force but witnessed the force oftentimes would not report accurately. And it ran the gamut from simply misleading all the way to false. It's not just about, oh, I want to discipline people. There's a reason accountability exists. And if you don't hold officers accountable, then they feel that they can act with impunity.
Correction officers feel like we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, right? When we act on a violent inmate and we use force, we're disciplined, we're suspended for 30 days. We're not perfect, but how can we be perfect? They expect us to be perfect in the environment that they put us in.
Benny Basio spent over 2 decades as a CO before becoming head of the union in 2020. He says maintaining order at Rikers during the pandemic has been nearly impossible. There have been over 2,000 confirmed cases of COVID among Department of Corrections staff, according to the DOC. And the Federal Monitor report said there were over 2,000 assaults on DOC staff over a 9-month period in 2021.
The last 2 years have probably been the worst 2 years in my 23-year history as a correction officer. Violence has skyrocketed. My officers are getting assaulted with impunity.
The narrative pretty much has been that things have been so bad during the pandemic because of the lack of staff and the inmates aren't getting the care that they need. Do you think that that's fair?
I mean, I don't think it's a fair depiction of us. We want inmates to get their minimum standards. We absolutely want them to get everything that they're entitled to get. And it's been hard to do that with the lack of staffing. Not to mention that we're working 24-hour shifts, double shifts just about every day, and in some cases, 24-hour shifts.
Why do you think that people are accusing correctional officers of abusing their sick time?
We're not abusing sick leave. People are dealing with long-term effects of COVID, recovering from major assaults. But we feel that having quote unquote sick leave policy where we get paid when we're out sick is necessary because of the dangerous function that we do. We just want protections. We want to go home to our families the same way that we went to work. We just want to be safe. And nonviolent inmates deserve to be safe. That's what we're really looking for.
Mayor Adams intends to keep his predecessor's plan to close Rikers Island by 2027. In the meantime, incarcerated people like Jimenez are trying to survive. What do you think the solution is? Do you think it's going to get any better?
Nah, it got to get worse before it get better. And that's what we're going through right now. Unfortunately, we pretty much don't have the chance to even prove our innocence. We treated, how is it that you're being treated like you're guilty before you even found, you know what I'm saying? Guilty of anything. This is a trap. This is a trap.
So again, they kind of aired both perspectives, so it was good to at least get a piece of that interview, which was great. I thought the union rep represented it very well, especially at the very end where he said nonviolent inmates as well, but I think it's fair when we start getting both perspectives and then let the people be more informed when they decide to make a decision as opposed to being led to one. I mean, that's always been the concern lately. The media likes to lead people to making a decision. And then when you get some people who don't understand how the system works, they could be easily led to anywhere you want to take them, especially if we can't say nothing and the media can. It's really the first person who speaks. So it's good to see things being done both ways, and then people can kind of lead their way, lead themselves to the right decision that they feel is best. And to be honest, that's how change happens. Change happens, at least good change happens when we're informed. We have an understanding of what's needed. The only way you get that understanding is from people that are invested in that career, that understand the job that needs to be done. And then you make change from the bottom up. I mean, that's key. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, is in a couple of days, I'm going to get Russ on, probably Joe Papano, a couple of people, and we're going to tell you everything we can about solitary confinement. And of course, we'll be willing to answer your questions, even if they go a little off topic. That's fine. We'll just kind of want to stay with the topic at first for at least the first hour and change. And then after that, we can kind of go off topic. I'm going to try to see if I can get it for later in the week, but I'm going to do a lot more lives this year. Probably a minimal, at least one a week, but possibly going to do more. I'm going to talk to Anna Salter, see if I can get her back on again. She is feeling well. At one point, she was a little under the weather, but she's feeling well. I reached out to her not too long ago. She's doing well. If you guys get a chance, her book Predators is a great book. I had her on the show once before. I'd like to bring her back on again. And then I think I'm going to I want to try to grow my channel a little bit. So I know I'm going to do some niche stuff, because I still want to give out tips and advice to my people in the profession. But I also want to introduce you to people that either been incarcerated or family members of the incarcerated. But I also want to introduce you, more importantly, to staff, all perspectives, all walks of life in this profession, because they really never get a microphone. They never get a platform. And I would love to give them a chance to kind of speak to you guys and tell them exactly what they do behind the wall, the different programs, their experiences. I really want to see if I can give you guys a good understanding of the correctional system. So, and the prison system, prison and jail system. I think there's a lot there. I mean, I've been doing this since 2012, so over a decade now. And I got over 1,300 videos on YouTube, individual topics, different things to discuss. So I know there's a lot of information here, but I would like to get my channel a little bit bigger, because I think that I got the staff's attention now. So my goal was always to get the staff to believe in what they do. And we're pushing forward. I have a newsletter that just came out that's positive as well. But I think now that I could start pushing from the inside out, so staff feeling positive, now I want to start getting some information out to the public and answer your questions. So again, anything you want to know about corrections or jail, prison, what I can give you people to answer those questions. All you got to do is tell me what you want to hear next. And if you have people that are incarcerated, we can help you with that too, give you proper advice in how to deal with, whatever issues they face. People from every angle, from program services to education. I mean, the things that, they could take advantage of when they're behind the wall, like good programming or how to work with administration. If you want to check out the newsletter, guys, I posted 3 pictures on my community side. So if you go to my YouTube channel and you hit the community, there's the newsletter. It's about commitment. What is it? Connection equates to commitment. So basically, if you're not connected to the profession, then you're really not committed. It's about 800 words. I'm going to do that monthly. And it's supposed to relate to anybody who works in the profession. So education, Natalie, I believe I think it'll be something that you will connect with as well. And do you know Steve Sinclair from Washington State? He would be awesome. Yeah, if you want to send him my way, tell him to email me at gangianthony@yahoo.com. But I would appreciate any help in getting my channel because YouTube doesn't help. So, and this channel is not monetized. So I just do it because I don't want them controlling my material. So I have my sponsors. So as always, guys, I love you guys. And I'll probably, knowing me, I know Russ will step up. I'm probably going to want to do this, that solitary confinement dialogue, probably Friday night at 10. But I gotta make sure the kids are asleep first. Gotta make sure it doesn't affect family time. Family time has to come first, and then I get my second family right here. But if those kids aren't asleep, it overwhelms the missus, and then she gets angry at the influencer, and I'm the influencer. So, all right, guys, I love you guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys in a couple of days.